Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council special meeting.
Mayor, I want to just make sure that we're streaming 1 second, sorry.
Oh, it's not ready? We are good? Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council special meeting for Monday, March 14th, 2022. A short one tonight. I call this meeting to order. We'll first start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able to, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and Assistant City Clerk, can you take us through roll call?
Certainly. Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Newnenkamp?
Present.
Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Present.
Member Wink?
Present.
Member Woodward?
Present.
Mayor Sierra?
Present.
All 7 are present.
Thank you, Assistant City Clerk. Just 2 agenda items to tonight. First up is going to be the for 4A, Council Bill 14, Water Infrastructure and Financing Innovation Act loan agreement with the U.S. EPA to finance capital investments in the city's sewer system. Up to speak on this is Director Peter Van Ryan, Deputy Director Sarah Stone. Good evening, Director.
Good evening. How about now? Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and we're pleased to be here tonight to talk about the WIFIA loan agreements that we've been working on for the past almost 20 months. I think we've been working on this. With me tonight is Deputy Director Sarah Stone with the Utilities Department. She's Deputy Director of Business Solutions, so this is her area in the financing arm of what she's responsible for. Also on the line we have our consultants, Carol Molesky, who's one of our financial consultants, Amy Broughton, who is an expert in WIFIA funding and has been helping this process since day one, and they're both with Stantec. And then we also have Tom Peltz with Kutak Rock, which is our bond counsel. So if there's questions that are a little bit more in depth, we may refer to them to answer those questions. We have come a long way. If you recall, way back last year, we submitted an LOI for low interest loans through the EPA, and that's what WIFIA essentially is it's a program to provide flexible payment terms and low interest loans to communities to invest in their water and wastewater infrastructure. We found that this was a strong program for us as the City of Englewood to utilize to help us balance the needs that have been building over time, to be able to balance the amount that's cash funded with the amount that we debt fund to be able to address the significant buildup of deferred maintenance that's occurred over the last several decades. We also have utilized this as a way to mitigate the effect on rates, so that it's not all that work is not cash financed, which would create a spike in rates. What this does is it helps us increase rates to help fund appropriately, but also spreads that funding requirement out 35 years beyond the loan to allow us to be able to spread the cost to future residents who will be utilizing the benefit of that infrastructure investment. Some of the projects, so we proposed on a project suite, and it's both wastewater and water improvements, and so it's a one water improvement project / program, and some of the major components of it are the pump station upgrades, which I know we've talked about, the Allen treatment plant upgrades, the flat rate to metered service, and potentially AMI, automated meter infrastructure that we would be looking to install. Lead service line replacement is a huge piece of this as well, because we want to utilize this as well as any of the federal infrastructure money to accelerate our lead service line replacement program, as well as the significant project load coming out of South Platte Renew to meet both our regulatory requirements and our ongoing investment in infrastructure. That's essentially what we're here to talk about today for that's what the funding is for. The actual funding itself, I'm going to turn over to Sarah, and she's going to go through the key terms of the loan and what we're asking for council's approval for tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate Peter's sentiments earlier. Thank you for hearing this tonight. It's been a long time coming. So I want to take you through the business terms. You'll notice there are two approval items. There's the sewer fund and there's the water fund. The agreements are largely the same. The sewer takes into account the joint use agreement for SPR with Littleton. So you'll see that those are the main differences. The key loan agreement business terms are essentially the same. So as noted, there's two enterprise fund agreements for your consideration. We went in with one application for the water and sewer funds, and WIFIA granted our request to actually split those into two different loan agreements during this process of due diligence, which has been going on since August 2021 with our submittal of our application. So with our application, we had a fee of $100,000, so that we actually saved on a second application fee by taking in one application and then splitting it into two loans since then. The interest rate is locked at loan closing, so you'll see in the documents that is not in there yet. Currently, interest rates are about 2.2% on average. They are creeping up with the volatility that's currently going on in the markets. The interest is capitalized as funds are dispersed, which is an advantage to the WIFIA program. So as we take funds to reimburse our project costs, we then capitalize at the interest on that time. So we do not start accruing any interest until that first dollar is borrowed. The loan term is 40 years, so we have 5 years for the majority of our project execution, and then 5 years of principal repayment that's deferred until 2031, which we will begin paying our principal and interest. A few other key terms to note. The net revenues from each enterprise fund secure the pledge for the loan. The WIFIA loan is equal to any current and future parity loan obligations for either fund. So for the current sewer fund, it's the Corp to loan that it's also parity to. The annual rate increases have been designed to meet the debt service coverage of 1.15 times our annual debt service for each of those loans. That's been modeled and it's in our long-term financial plan. We will have federal compliance and reporting obligations, so such things as Davis-Bacon regulations, American iron and steel purchase requirements, things like that we will track and then report back to WIFIA with each request for funds. Finally, we'll have an O&M reserve fund that's established. It's 3 months of costs in each fund or up to $1.25 million. That's been modeled as well in each of the financial plans. So the summary of the financial implications are on this slide. The water loan principal is a maximum of $46.5 million. Project costs are estimated to be about $38 million, but we've accounted for some capitalized interest based on a maximum interest rate assumed of 2.95% and then an aggressive drawdown schedule just to get that maximum amount that we've included in the ordinance. So the same thing for the sewer loan principal as well, which is 26.5, and our project costs are closer to $22 million. Anticipating loan closing fees are a total of $500,000, and that's for both loans together. This does not include the $100,000 application fee. And then once the loan is executed, we'll have an operating period servicing fee of $8,000 per year for the life of the loan, and then the construction period servicing fee of $11,000 per year per loan, and that's just during that construction time frame. So this is our timeline for agreement approval through Inglewood's process. The EPA is actually going through a similar process and are presenting it through their supervisory committees at this time as well. So we took these agreements to the Water Sewer Board on February 8th, and then again on March 8th. And we're before council tonight for the first reading. Second reading is scheduled for March 28th. Then we'll have the ordinance publication period with loan execution planned for April 28th or after. And then we'll have project delivery through 2028. We actually have the opportunity to extend the 5-year construction period within the terms of the agreement. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director Stone. Mayor Pro Tem.
Can you go back to the slide with the loan agreement key business terms?
First or second one?
The next one, or the one, that one. Second bullet point, WIFIA loan equal to current and future parity lien obligations. I'm pretty sure I know what each of those words means individually, but together, I don't understand what that means.
Sure. So and Tom might be able to explain this in better terms, but basically if we have the order by which we pay our debt service, WIFIA will always be on the same level of whatever lien obligation we have. So we have an existing obligation on the sewer fund and on the water fund right now. WIFIA is equal to that. So we have to have the debt service available, the revenue available to pay the debt service for both of those loans. So we could potentially have a lower parity lien obligation, which would be like that next step down, if that makes sense.
Sort of, so essentially this is just stating that we need to ensure that we maintain a rate that allows us to pay all of our debt.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Member Woodward.
Yes, I have a couple of them. On the estimated cost of the projects, I assume we included in some sort of inflation number into that?
We did. So actually, if we go back to the first slide, you would see that our application went in at $45 million. We increased that to a project cost of $60.5 million to take into account some of the increases we're seeing in construction costs.
Okay, great. And then my other question is on the water side of it, what is the projection for the timing for the water improvements, not the lead pipe, which replacement, which is probably going to take time, a lot of time, but for the main improvements that we're doing, the piping from the Chatfield area and the softening and the taste type.
So a few things on that. So the piping of City Ditch from Chatfield to the Allen plant is not part of WIFIA. So we are not funding that with WIFIA funds. We didn't have that in the original LOI. We had originally put it in, but then we took it out because it was going to create possible delays in our WIFIA funding. And so that is no longer a part of this project suite. It doesn't mean we're not going to do that project. We're just funding that through other mechanisms, through our cash that we have in the water fund. As far as the other projects go, essentially we will be executing those projects over the next 5 years. And really what we're looking at, part of the challenges is, one, we need staff to execute those projects. So once you have $100 million worth of projects that need to get executed, there have to be people to execute those projects. We've started to build a staff of engineers to execute on those projects. But right now we are also looking at outside contract help or additional potential. We may be coming back to council for additional project manager requests because there's a maximum amount that an individual can execute from a project management perspective. So we're still working out the details on that. We have 5 years to initiate the projects, and so we have to, over the next 5 years, I would imagine the first year or two, will not be as much executed because we'll be building towards that construction execution. It'll be largely concepts and planning and design, and then also getting in place that staffing to be able to then further execute on those projects. I think the significant amount of construction execution will occur in the next 2 to 5 or 6 years. We have to initiate the project within the 5 years, but then we have 2 years to complete the project after that 5-year term. So in reality, the total amount here will likely be, if we were to fully expend it, will likely take about 7 years to expend. And so I think we are looking at what are our most urgent priorities, and then also sequencing those priorities to ensure that we don't improve something that we later find out we don't necessarily improve. An example of that is softening at the Allen treatment plant. So softening is something that we want to do after we independently complete the piping of City Ditch, because we've talked about the hardness at Union Ave versus the hardness at Chatfield. And so what we don't want to do is put in a softening system that addresses water constantly coming from Union Ave if the long-term goal is to pull it from a place where it's actually the source water is softer. So we may end up downsizing whatever that softening system would be that we ultimately put into the Allen plant. It's in our project suite, but we don't know exactly yet, and we wouldn't want to do that out of order. Okay. So there's some examples of how we're planning to execute on it.
So that is, the project is, if I understood it correctly, 6 months ago, or back in August of last year, I think I heard a 3-year to get it piped and the stuff done at the Allen plant.
Yeah,
so that's probably a little longer than the 3 years right now, correct?
So our goal on the piping of City Ditch, which is independent of this WIFIA discussion, that goal right now is we have an aggressive goal of 3 years on that one. From there, we'll be able to determine some of those secondary improvements that we may need to make in the Allen plant. We also know we have other improvements to make in the Allen plant that we will be doing as part of the WIFIA funding, and also the pump stations, which are so critical in terms of advancing the construction of those projects as well. So the initial goal to try and dramatically improve the source water quality, which we think will have a significant effect on the water that you all receive in your homes, that project, separate from WIFIA, is we're scheduling as about we're tracking for about a 3-year time frame on that. Okay. That's our goal.
Great. Good. That helps me there. My last question is, if the infrastructure bill provides funds for this, our loan could be less than the 46 million, correct?
Maybe. And the reason why I say maybe is that when we put together the financial models a year and a half ago, and then adopted the new rates, there was one big unfunded piece of that, and that was lead service lines. And we weren't sure exactly at that point in time how we were going to fund the accelerated removal of lead service lines. We had a program in there to start to address it, but we've looked at the WIFIA funding as a way to help supplement that. And the infrastructure bill is really that thing that we weren't thinking of at the time of the financial plans, that really is the opportunity for us to dramatically accelerate that replacement of lead service lines. And so even if the way we've looked at the infrastructure money, we've talked to the feds and the state and told them that we are interested in $70 million to address our potential need from a lead service line perspective. So who knows if we'll get $70 million, but that's the number we put out there, because we think that combined with the amount that we have in WIFIA will be enough to help us accelerate that complete removal of lead service lines in our service area. The reason I say maybe is we don't know that 70 million number is the right number. We're still trying to figure out if it's 40 million or if it's 70 million. And once we have a determination of the exact number of lead service lines in our service area, then we'll be able to correspondingly fund through either the infrastructure bill or WIFIA.
Great. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Member Russell.
Thank you. So it says that WIPIA has a maximum funding threshold of 49%, which means that will we have to encumber the entire 122 million now?
We will not. So that is the advantage of the WIFIA program, is that it's very flexible, and we will know what those project costs are, and we will seek refund from WIFIA as they are happening. So we would we can actually encumber those costs at any time during the 5-year period, depending on what contract we're looking to execute. And WIFIA can either be used at that time, all up front, or we can delay the use of WIFIA through that 5-year construction period. We'll just balance that as we model it. through
And
the
we
financial
can
plan.
use our share of the 122 million that's not provided by WIFIA.
Correct.
And where is that money coming from? Is that coming from the budget, from the rate increases, or?
Sure, yeah, so we've balanced what that 5-year projection of funding sources might need to be. In the water fund, there's a significant cash reserve in there now, so we would spend that down. And then over time, look at other funding sources, such as a state revolving fund loan or another bond issue. In the sewer fund, there is some cash balance, and then additionally, we would go out for another bond issue or a state revolving fund loan.
And so, will we be increasing, or as we increase the WIFIA principal, will it require that we increase rates to the ratepayers?
So that's all been modeled through the financial plan, is on track for that 4.5% to 5%.
It's just, so that's what we have modeled. So we have modeled a standard set of rate increases over the next 10 years. So we are looking in the water and the sewer fund side of 4.5% per year, which is what all of our financial plans incorporate. The WIFIA funding, the debt, the cash needed to balance out that other 51%. That's all in this financial model to ensure that we don't have a 4%, a 4%, and then a 20%. And then, so we have tried to smooth that set of rates over the next 10 years so that the customers will see can predict what the effect will be. So 4.5% generally equates to $1.20 a month from a water perspective, and similar on the sewer side. So we're talking about a couple bucks a month per year is something that people would plan for as a standard set of increases, which goes into the modeling that all of this is part of.
Okay. The only reason I have gotten a couple calls in the last few days, there are a lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet right now. And if inflation continues the way it is, we're going to have a lot of people struggling to pay their water bills and their sewer bills. And so if we do move forward with this, is there any way that we can adjust anything? Let's say that inflation gets increasingly worse.
So two sides to that. So the one piece of that is if inflation is affecting all of us individually, it's affecting the cost of projects as well, which means we aren't going to be able to do as much as we maybe have anticipated based on project costs outpacing what we had planned for. The one thing, anytime that that anybody has a question about affordability and paying their bills, there are resources. And if Sarah's office has access to several programs right now that are out there to help people with their bills. And so if there's anybody who's struggling with paying their bills, we have resources to help them out. I think the challenge with moving off of our financial plans is then the discussion is we come back to council and we say, okay, we were originally anticipating this is our modeled rate increases. If we want to adjust off of that, then we have to talk about what things we're not going to do in terms of improvements to the system or work on the system to bring it to modern day standards, I would say.
Right now, and I'm not I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this. Are any of these things that we're doing required to be done like, like especially in the sewer area where you have to meet certain standards in a certain period of time? I mean, those have to be done, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we have regulatory drivers on the sewer side, so Reg 85 is the one we've talked about the most. That's for our nutrients, so that is a driver on the sewer side. We also have infrastructure upkeep so that we don't end up with a point in time where we haven't invested for a long period of time and then all of a sudden we have to make these significant investments. That's partly what the challenge is on the water side. The water side, there's such deferred maintenance for such a long period of time that while it's not a matter of is there a specific regulatory driver driving the need for that improvement, it's what's the risk of not making the improvement as it relates to a potential regulatory fallout as a result of that. I think there are a number of aspects of the system that we have somewhat the approach has been, we'll just we'll just do it for another year. We'll do it for another year, and we'll do it for another. Well, when you do that for 20 years, all of a sudden you're 20 years past what the useful life was of that equipment, and the staff is trying to keep that operating when in reality it should have been replaced a decade ago. And so it's not necessarily an overt immediate regulatory driver as much as it is what happens if we don't do it, and what's the ongoing increase in risk of something catastrophic that affects the system. And that's the constant balance that we're working through with this system to ensure that we're making the right investments at the right time.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
Any other questions from council? If not, I have a couple. And I think they should be quick. So, quick question for you, Director or Deputy Director. Either of the two can answer this. But tonight we're approving the loan agreement, and the reason why we're doing this as a special meeting is that we're trying to lock in a lower interest rate before they rise next month. Will council still have to approve the specific budgets as part of the larger budget towards the end of the year, or the individual projects? What's the next step, or what's that process look like?
Yeah, so the approval process for all the projects will be the same. So we'll come to council with contracts that are fit into these. We'll let you know that those are WIFIA projects. But yes, the normal process will happen the same way as usual.
Okay. And then my second question, Deputy Director, is it's more about process. So we were talking about the second reading is going to happen on the 28th, which would make it a special reading. Is there a special meeting? Is there any reason why we couldn't do it on the 21st, next Monday? Just curious.
I would have to look to Tamara for that one.
If I heard you correctly, you asked, is there any reason we couldn't do this next week at the meeting?
Correct.
No, there's no reason.
Okay, perfect. That answers my questions. Any other questions, Member Woodward?
I think with the Fed meeting, I think later this week and possibly next week, I think that was part of the thinking with that, is because we may be seeing increases in interest rates by next week. So, and I'm sure these are affected by that to some degree. So I think that was my understanding.
That's true, which is why we're trying to get this locked in as soon as possible. We are somewhat at the mercy of the EPA process as much of anything. So it's really this timing what the Fed is doing with EPA's process with our own process and making that all come together as fast as possible. Yeah. The one thing that we have heard from the EPA is the Fed increases that have been anticipated this year are somewhat already incorporated into those rates that we've talked about. So the rate that Sarah talked about at 2.2% is accounting for what is anticipated to be Fed increases. So we don't expect a dramatic change. What we don't want to do is we don't want to keep pushing this. We want to lock it in before. I mean, if you listen to anybody, all you hear about is the fact that rates are potentially going to go up. So we want to lock it in while they're low before we lose that opportunity.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? If not, can I get a motion to approve CB 14?
I move to approve Council Bill 14.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any comments? Member Woodward? Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem.
You guys have done a ton of work on this, and I am really happy to see creative financing methods that benefit everyone in the city, control rates, and bring the capital improvements that were deferred for so long forward. So I just want to compliment you on your work. Thanks for being here tonight, and thanks for bringing this forward to us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Member Russell.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the hard work on this, and thank you so much for that. And I also appreciate your question, Mayor. I would like to move it forward just because I'd like study session evenings for study sessions and meetings on regular nights. So thank you.
Thank you. I too want to just thank staff for all the work that you did in this. I remember back when we started just the master plan and just the gap analysis of what was needed across all our infrastructure across the city and just taking us to this point. So I think that this is a very special day, at least to get the loan agreement in place, and then obviously the next step of actually starting the projects and digging holes in the ground. So no, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for all the work that you have done on this. If no further comments, can we please vote?
Thank you. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnankamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
All votes been cast, 7 ayes.
Thank you, City Clerk. And then moving on to Council Bill 15, brand new presentation. Director Van Rye.
No,
It's
oh yeah, so this is just the second, this is for the sewer. Sorry, it's the same presentation.
anything further to add,
Sorry,
Director Van Rye?
sorry about that. The button scared me. I didn't know what happened there.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve Council Bill 15?
I move to approve Council Bill 15.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Wink. Any comments? Member Wink? No? Can we please vote?
Thank you. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnankamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
All votes have been cast, 7 ayes.
Thank you, City Clerk, and thank you again, Director Van Rye and Deputy Director Stone, for the presentation, all the work.
And thank you, and I really need to extend the thanks to Sarah and her staff, as well as our consultants. We have gotten a tremendous amount of consultant help over the last year and a half to help us put in a position where our application to the EPA was such a strong application. So I think there's a significant team of people that have made this possible, and my thanks goes to all of them as much as appreciation from all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Now moving on to agenda item 5 is an executive session. So the executive session for a conference with the city attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6-402 4B. And let me just make sure, this is my first time going through executive session. So let's see here. I read this at the top. So it said, I move to go into executive session tonight for a conference with the city attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6-402 4B. Present at the executive session are the following persons: Mayor Othaniel Sierra, Mayor Pro Tem Stephen Ward, Councilmember Russell, Councilmember Joe Anderson, Councilmember Newnankamp, Councilmember Woodward, Councilmember Wink, City Manager Sean Lewis, and City Attorney Tamara Niles. May I have a vote? May I have a second? Wait. Did I do that? Yeah, I moved. Okay.
Can I
I
ask-
have a second? I'm
Can
sorry.
can I ask a question?
Sure, Member
Can
Russell.
we get a little bit more description of why we're going into executive session? I mean, this is pretty general and pretty vague.
Certainly. Well, first, has there been a second to the motion? Because generally there should be a second before we have further discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Russell. And do we vote now or, no, actually, now discussion.
Yes, so we have two issues to discuss, and the language presented in the motion mirrors the statute, and that's why it's worded in that specific way. So we have two specific, issues to discuss that have been raised previously with council one-on-one. But they're specific legal questions regarding my advice to city council, so that's why we're going into executive session.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
All votes have been cast, 7 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. We will now exit this meeting and reconvene in the community room. think we're all back. So the time is now 7:23 and the executive session has been concluded. Present at the executive session are the following people. Mayor Nathaniel Sierra, Mayor Pro Tem Stephen Ward, council members Rita Russell, Joe Anderson, Chelsea Noonenkamp, Jim Woodward, Cheryl Wink, City Manager Sean Lewis, City Attorney Tamara Niles. I move to close the executive session. May I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Can we please vote?
Thank you, and apologies, I was notified that I was reading the roll incorrectly, so I believe I have it correct this time. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All 7 ayes.
Thank you. And for the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I will ask that you state your concerns for the record. Seeing none, we're now moving on to agenda item 6, reports from boards and commissions, council liaisons. Does anybody have anything to bring up tonight? Member Noonenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have a couple report outs. One is from the library board who met this last week. They heard from one of our librarians, Michelle Branstetter, and she shared about the experience of the librarians over the last several weeks, having more training from EPD and just more confidence, feeling that they have more tools. Having the new trespass ordinance is helping. Having a new full-time security specialist who's working actually 6 days a week right now is really helping. I'm very grateful to the leadership team, the police department, and the city attorney's office for helping them address some of the challenges that they've been facing. And they said that it's considerably better than it was 6 months ago. And Michelle also shared that it is more demoralizing to not have people in the library. So they are very happy to be back open. They are going to be assessing Sundays after May when our new manager starts. We have a new library manager who the hire I think will be announced soon, but is joining us from Nevada and will be relocating to Inglewood. And so then once that person is up and running, they will readdress opening on Sundays. That group is also going to start meeting in person. They reviewed the 2022 action plan for the library and also elected their new officers. Also, the week before that, we had a Cultural Arts Commission meeting. They are working on a really cool idea that we've never done in Inglewood, at least we haven't done in several years, of highlighting local artists through studio tours and how they can make that in a new event for the city, really open up some studio doors and create a map so people can kind of track and follow along and visit different studios and different local artists throughout the city. They're planning that for either later this year or next year. They're also working with Tony Arnaldi and her team to secure local artists for some of the Inglewood markets coming up this year, which is really exciting, starting in May at the May market. And they are also going to be meeting in person next month, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Anybody else? Member Woodward.
Parks and Recreation met last week, and we did get a report on some of the community outreach regarding the parks, the meetings on Cushing Skate Park and the ideas there, Baker Park, and also Bates Logan. And the director was telling us the response has been really favorable, and a lot of it. So, especially on the skate park. So that was real encouraging. There's been a lot of very positive things said by neighbors and people that are directly affected. And other than that, there's just pretty much updates. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Anderson.
I'll mention the Water and Sewer Board. We did approve the WIFIA loan agreements there that we approved tonight, as well as a meter order for purchase of meter and meter parts. That'll be coming, I assume that's coming to council too. And then an update on the backflow prevention, which they got 100% compliance on. And then finally, they have ended the or the suspension of water moratorium. They've ended the moratorium on water shutoffs, and people are getting red tags now, so they're working on getting all of those back bills paid and are having citizens responding to that. The other commission meeting I had was the Sustainability Commission on the 8th, and the bulk of that meeting was discussing their recommendations for updating the sustainability plan that goes into our strategic plan. So those will also be coming back to City Council. That's all I have on boards and commissions.
Thank you, Member Anderson. I do have just one update from ETAC. They did meet this past Thursday. The primary conversation was around Old Hampton and the Public Advisory Committee that has just recently formed. I believe their first meeting was actually that same night on Thursday, and I believe there's only 2 other meetings going on. But from my understanding, sounds like it's a majority businesses, DDA, some citizens are on that advisory committee as well, and then that night, 2 members of ETAC asked to sit in as well on those meetings. But I think the next couple meetings are sometime in, I want to say April and June. Yep, April 28th and June 23rd. So it is in the notes. But that was the majority of the meeting that night. Nothing else. Nothing else from council. So we'll move on to agenda item 7, council members' choice. Anybody want to start? If not, I have 2 items. One tomorrow night at 5 to 7. Frame to art. So you're saying the same thing. I'm hearing 2 different things. I'm wondering if you both are saying the same thing. But from 5 to 7, Frame to Art is celebrating the 31st anniversary at that open for business, obviously. I will be in attendance tomorrow night. I believe Member Noonenkamp stated she will be as well. So I'll probably be there for the back hour of that 5 to 7 meeting. Second, there was a second item that I wanted to mention. Oh, actually, there's 3 items tonight. So the second item is that DDA is having their next meeting on the 30th of this month. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that SKB is actually going to be presenting. So members of the public that actually want to hear dialogue between DDA and SKB, who is the master developer of the city center area, I would advise you to attend. And that meeting will start at 4:30 on that last Wednesday of this month, which I believe is the 30th. And then lastly, I did want to mention to council, just because we talked about it last time around, but I just received the agenda for our next Dr. Cog meeting. I will send it to the city manager to pass out to everyone, but that meeting is it this Wednesday? Oh, wow. Okay, so we won't have a chance to talk about it, but I'll at the very least provide the agenda of what is on tap for that night. Nothing else for me. Anybody else on council? Seeing none, we're moving on to city manager's choice.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. You probably saw on the news, and I think Assistant City Manager Dodd emailed you all about our utility box break-in. And so we are reviewing camera footage of that box and that occurrence. And but at this time, we're not going to be able to take payments there. So members of the public can pay in person on the 3rd floor, by phone, or online. We also wanted to let you know, we mentioned it in the Friday report, but we're excited that the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Action Plan has been awarded the Metro Vision. That's the Dr. Cog's big awards event of the year. We've been awarded a special recognition for that plan. And I want to thank Tim Dodd for submitting that on behalf of Littleton, Sheridan, and Inglewood. And then last but not least, we also, MOA and the city of Inglewood worked jointly to release a press release today regarding the Museum of Outdoor Arts plan to close the gallery, the indoor gallery here in the Civic Center. So it is a bit of an end of an era for the Civic Center in losing that space. We can take some solace in the fact that they're not moving it to another city. They're simply closing it as the patterns for museums and galleries has really changed. I think COVID has really changed that a lot. We will also be seeing, though, the offices that were in that space relocate to their facility in Greenwood Village. And so they have proposed, in addition, they have proposed to leave virtually all of their art in Inglewood, and there is a dollar value associated with that. And I was going to just check in with council to see if you might like for the Cultural Arts Commission to review that proposal, to see, just to get their recommendations. I think that would be the appropriate board or commission, but wanted to check in with you before we put that on the agenda.
I see a lot of nodding heads yes for that, so.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, city manager?
That's it, thank you.
All right, if there is nothing else tonight, this meeting is now adjourned. It is 7:34. Everybody have a great evening. See you next week.